Hello and welcome to the Manage IQ Sprint 137 review. I will give an overview. Harpreet will talk to us about the UI. Adam will give us an update on the providers. Jovi will give us an update on the platform. Alberto on the API, and Jason on the developer experience. All right, so this sprint there we go. This sprint, we had a higher number of PRs merged and opened. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we were actually cleaning up a lot of the integrations that we have with developer tools such as Code Climate and some other things. So there was lots of tiny little PRs to address that. And you see that also reflected here in this slide of closed PRs by label. However, the enhancements to bug ratio remained roughly the same. Here's a chart of all of the core repositories and their health status. We're still working on making this a little bit more integrated and automated so we can actually see the differences between sprints. And I'll turn it over to Harpreet here.
Hello, everyone. We had a total of 42 UI PRs merged this sprint. Of the main bug fixes and enhancements are listed here and on the next slide. So next slide, please. Before moving on to the next slide, just want to mention a couple of PRs on this list that did not have any visual changes. In PR 7068, changes were made to enable carbon style CSS. In future sprints, we will see more work on that front. And a lot of React related work was done. A new field array React component was introduced that will be used on some of the forms in future sprints. And also right-hand side trees were converted to React. Okay, now move on to next slide, please. So the list navbar from the left side was removed from non-explorer style summary and nested list screens. This gives us more room on the screen and removes the redundant information from the left side since that information was already available on the boxes on the summary screen. I have before and after screenshots here to show the differences. Next slide, please. So we are starting to convert Explorer style screens to non-Explorer style screens. In order to do that, we started splitting Chargeback Explorer that was under Overview Chargeback menu, and that had reports, rates, and assignments all on one screen. Now we have them all on their own screens. This PR added new third level menus under Overview Chargeback for each of those. Next slide, please. After splitting the explorers, we made further changes to how chargeback rates and assignments screens are displayed. Can you go back one slide? Yep, that one. So after splitting the explorers, we made further changes to chargeback rates and assignment screens that are displayed here in the screenshots from before the changes. As you can see in these two screenshots, we have trees on the left and based upon tree selection contents on the right side are replaced. These were Explorer style screens that had single URL that always remained the same while you browse through objects in that specific area. Next slide, please. On this slide, I'm displaying the product features, tree and start page settings from before changes in this sprint. We used to have all edit-related chargeback rate features right under rates node and only a start page, single start page entry for Overview Chargeback Explorer. Next slide, please. And here I have some examples of old and new style URLs to show how the new screens can be accessed using direct links. Next slide, please. And I have a small demo to show the latest changes in the chargeback area. Oleg, can you run that? Are you guys able to hear something? There's no audio.
No audio.
I wonder how.
So I don't know if it felt like is your volume muted? Your mic muted because I know she recorded audio.
A list of providers
There
in
we
the other areas of the product. So if you want to, if you click on one of the nodes here in the list view, it will bring you to the summary screen, and then the buttons are the same. And you can use breadcrumbs to go back to the list of the rates. Everything else remains the same. You see all the toolbar buttons and everything. And also I'll show you the chargeback assignments. And as you can see, there's no trees here also on the left side, but what we did was we added 2 of the tabs. So if you want to add the compute rate assignments, you would select the compute tab, or if you want to add storage rate assignments, you will switch the tab to storage, and it will show you your storage assignments, and you will be able to save and reset your previous saved changes. What this gives us is that with the Explorer screens, we did not have the direct linking. So let's say if you have a direct link to the rates, or if you want to add compute or storage rate assignments, if you have a link, if you click on it, it will just bring you directly to this screen. Previously, you had to jump through Explorer, and then you would select the node in the tree in the left, and then you would see the buttons on the top, and then you were able to do that. So this is bypassing all that, and that's what I have here. And then this also adds new shortcuts in the start page. So you will see overview chargeback rates and overview chargeback assignments now here. Those point to the new screens. And also you will see some additional new features in the features tree. So if I go to here, roles, and notice test role, and then under overview, you should see chargeback, and under chargeback rates, you will see new level view, and that has list and show product features. And modify is the same. We had these previously as well: add, copy, delete, and edit. And that is all I have for this demo.
All right, so we will make this video available somewhere on manageiq.org so that everybody can get a chance to see it. Or to Adam.
Thanks, Oleg. For VMware this sprint, we fixed an issue provisioning a VM to an NSX network. There was an issue with a missing data type that represents the backing for the network interface card, pointing to that opaque network. So when you selected an opaque network for provisioning, it would go through, provision the VM, but it would fail to find that type. So we added that to the gem and bumped the gem dependency for the provider. So now you're able to successfully provision a VM to an NSX network. We also are now able to handle non-administrative users. We collect some information about the license manager to see if you're qualified to get an NSX license for some of the things that we do on migration analytics. There's a problem where if you connect to the vCenter with a non-administrative user that doesn't have access to that license manager, you're getting back a nil for the set of licenses that we were failing on. So now we handle that case. We also added an EMS ref to the EMS event that gets saved. This was added a while ago for, I believe, the vCloud provider to the schema, but in the VMware infra provider, we never actually set it. So now if you want to try to identify VMware events by the by the key, so the VMware event key is what we're setting to the EMS ref if you're trying to find that from an external location. Next slide. For OpenShift, we improved the detection of metrics and alerts post names. So when you go to add a container provider, an OpenShift provider specifically, there's a button which allows you to auto detect the host name for the metrics of the alert service on the cluster. This connection was done in the UI code as opposed to in the provider code. So we refactored that to remove it from the UI, move it into the provider. And then in addition, it was only working for the version 3 of the OpenShift provider. On version 4, they changed the name of the project, and they also changed the name of the routes for the different metrics and alert services. So we updated the detection logic to work also on OCP v4. Currently, only metrics or Prometheus are supported on OCP4, and on version 3, there's alerts and metrics with Prometheus and Hawkular. Next slide. So here's a quick screenshot on a CRC, so an OCP4 cluster. Auto detection worked for the Prometheus metrics endpoint. Next slide. For OpenStack, this PR had been out for a long time, slowly being improved, and finally landed in this sprint. Marek added a new event catcher type for the OpenStack provider. The OSP16 added the STF type of service for eventing. So this is now a new addition. So you have AMQP, you have Ceilometer, and you have STF as options for catching events on OpenStack, depending on the OpenStack version that you have. This is based on Qubit Proton, so if you're doing development locally, you'll need to install that C library, similar to if you're doing development on Nuage. And Marek put a nice video demo together, so if you want to review that, see what the services look like on the OpenStack side, how to set it up on ManageIQ. He has a nice demo there. And next slide, and over to Jovi.
Thanks, Adam. So a total of 69 PRs were merged across the platform space this sprint, which is a big number. As Oleg mentioned on the intro slide, a lot of that had to do with things like code climate cleanup that lands in the space. The highlights of the PRs, starting with enhancements, one was contributed to add EMS type and EMS UID to the provider event payload. This one's noteworthy because it will assist in identifying the source provider without having to actually make an MIQ API query, so it'll improve performance. Another enhancements were added to the appliance console CLI for OpenID Connect configuration, which will now allow the OAuth introspection endpoint to be passed as a parameter. And if it's not passed, an attempt will be made to try to fetch it. And for ManageIQ Kubernetes Podified support, Nixie continues to bang it out of the park with starting with some enhancements. OpenID Connect configuration has been added for the API access, and it's no longer possible to set the admin password when deploying the application, and it is now possible to actually remove the API access for the admin user. Resource constraints were added where they were missing. An enhancement was contributed that will enable the storage class to be set in the custom resource. And another enhancement was contributed allowing for a secret containing a certificate authority's SSL certs necessary for secure communications to the OpenID Connect identity provider. Lastly, work continued on the Rails upgrade, and there's a couple of links to the PRs, relevant PRs there. And that's it for the platform space. On to Alberto and the API for the rest of the story. Can't resist.
Thanks, Joe. That never gets old, I tell you. So for the API, we had two main enhancements that came in, one by David H. He added basically validation based on the DDF schema whenever we do creates or updates of providers. Here shown an example where bad attribute was sent, and you get the appropriate error message with that. Next slide, please. Yep. And next enhancements I did for requesting report results download, similar to what you could do in the UI. So here, essentially, you post a request download action toward the results resource. And part of that, you specify how you want the report. So whether it's text, CSV, or PDF, if the PDF generator is available on the appliance. And with that, you get a action signature that includes the tasks generated for it, and including something new called the task results href. You can basically query the task, and when it's complete, you just fetch the report with the task results, and that will be the appropriately content typed text, CSV, what have you. And you could also request bulk request download. So if you want to get reports for multiple report results, you'll get the multiple action results for that. And documentation is available up on manageiq.org. And that's it for the API. Next slide.
Okay. Brandon has been working on a new repo with respect to our style, and he created the manageiq style repo, which is a gem that contains our Rubocop styling as well as some of the other styling files. This is extracted from guides. The motivation behind this is that when we update our styles, it's hard to keep the bot and the repos all in sync. And so with this new gem, and with a cool feature from Rubocop that lets you inherit profiles from gems, we're hoping to sort of centralize it in one place and make it simpler to be able to keep up to date with the latest Rubocop changes. So new repo, and he'll be making PRs to a bunch of the other things in order to get this over the finish line. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for helping make Sprint 137 happen, and looking forward to doing the Sprint 138 review in 2 weeks. And that's a wrap. Thank you very much, everyone.